Hi guys! Happy Friday Eve. Happy Thursday, which is Friday Eve. Um, I was enjoying that music. um, so let me get things squared away here. Oh my goodness. Thanks, Druid. Robin's here. Padma's here. Oh, long time no see, friend. I am so glad you're here. So, it's been a busy day, you guys. I'm usually like low key on Mondays and Thursdays before the stream, and then I rush at the after the stream to do stuff. But I had to wake up early this morning and run some errands. Because that snow is coming, and I didn't want to wait till tomorrow. Because you guys know how it is. I mean, we all say we don't do it, but we complain about the people that do while we're doing it, which is going to the grocery store and getting eggs and bread. And I was like, if I don't get it today, but there also was some other winterizing things I had to take care of today. And I think what probably infuriates me the most about, here I am railing at the weather. But you know how a terrible snowstorm sneaks up on you, and the day or two before, the weather is just perfect. It's probably, I don't know, 45, 46 outside. It's kind of warm for winter, but it's still cool, I mean, it's jacket weather. Not a cloud in the sky. Most beautiful blue sky today. And I'm just like, the snow is coming. So, yeah, Druid, you don't even know what to expect with this weather system. Yes, it's saying all kinds of stuff. And I don't know what they're reporting where you are, but I know from like New England down to the mid-Atlantic and possibly even some of the more southern states. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, and I guess you guys out in California, I know, get a cattail. I know was it Northern California when one of our friends was telling us there's a little bit of rumblings. This was it the San Andreas Fault is being a little touchy. So my goodness. We have a cat visitor today. She hasn't been around in a long time. Um, I gave them some little treats about 20 minutes ago so they'd leave me alone. And yeah, she's like, "Oh, a treat." So, all right. You got to get back there. So, yes, grocery stores and Walmart. Yeah, I know. I count myself very lucky. I have a grocery store within walking distance of my house. So, whether the weather's bad or not, they always open it. Um, and it's not where I regularly shop because it's more expensive. But in a pinch, they got the bread and the eggs. So I feel lucky for that. And I also live beside a convenience store, so that helps as well. Um, so yeah, we will sending good vibes out to everybody to stay warm and safe with this impending storm. And for you guys who are not in the snow zone, you know, send us good vibes. Today might be a little bit short. I'm not going to start the new book yet. I was a little bit late making my post, like asking, what do you guys want to, what do you guys want to read? I know live here on Monday, we got a couple of suggestions and they were pretty much all the American Quilts book. But yeah, I wanted to put it out there for the lurkers and the people that, aren't usually here live to see if anybody had any other feelings. So we'll probably get started on Monday. So today we are going to look at Quilter's Newsletter Magazine, September 1975. Do you think there's some bicentennial stuff in there? Yes, there is. And it's one of them that I have not looked at in detail yet. So as I was taking pictures to put on the screen for you, I was like, oh, there's some good stuff in this one. And double knit fabric and quilts, which I love double knit. Of course, I know everybody cringes. I'm like, double knit quilts. Ugh. I have a ton of them, actually. At one point, they were so easy to snap up for nothing. Like I have a full-blown double knit comforter. My mom said, like, I guess apparently you might be able to still do this, but in the 70s and 80s, you could kind of make your own, like sort of make your own comforter. You could send your top off and it's not quilted. It's just got that little ziggy zaggy kind of swirly thing that a comforter would have, and it's big and smushy. So yeah, right, Padma. Well, anyway, I pulled up some pictures of 3 of my my double knits. I have probably 4 or 5 more that I have not really taken pictures of, but these show what some of the challenges and amusing things about double knit quilts. So and actually 2 of them are actually just tops. I don't think they were ever intended to be backed quilts. Because once you put some backing and some batting with double knit, oh my god, it's like sweat city. And like not the good kind of sweat, not the wicking it away from your body sort of sweat, but like literally dying in a pool of your own sweat. So anyway, we'll look at those because they're fun. I have a new miniature to show you guys. I got this before Christmas and I just built it the other day, and it was a easy build. It was a matter of like just filling some little pots with soil. Look at this, you guys. It's Venus flytraps. Ah, look at them. Aren't they the cutest? And they come in these little sort of monster planters where you plant them, and it's got the soil is like a kinetic sand kind of stuff. So it's, a wonderful craft for children, but also a wonderful craft for 50-something-year-old women. And the best part, not just the fact that there's 2 little Venus flytraps, comes with a fly swatter, which has 3 little tiny flies. And I've seen people on social media literally taking tweezers and getting the little flies out and gluing them to the Venus flytraps. I've not tried that yet. I feel like there's a my eyeballs tend to fail me at this point. I need to get, we talked about this before, and I'm pretty sure it was here on my stream and not on Quilt Nerding, but I need those like binocular type magnifying glasses because I really, it's like I struggle now in even in pretty bright light to get the detail and things, and that's awful. When you sew small and you love miniatures, like, ugh. So anyway, this brought me joy. No thanks, Druid. I bought some fruit because with my husband not being home, I haven't been able to do my regular grocery run. And I was like, I'm not buying the expensive fruit across the street. But today I caved in because I'm like, I need fruit. And so I brought the fruit in the house and I saw a fruit fly immediately. So I was like, oh, not only did I buy expensive fruit, it came with fruit flies. So I hate that. But you know what works really well with fruit flies? Just as a side note, those Zevo blue lights. I don't know if you've seen these. It's a you plug it in, it looks like a nightlight, but it's a blue light, and I guess it's supposed to attract like flying things like gnats and fruit flies. And it comes with this little like a domed front thing. It looks like a nightlight basically, but that domed thing has a sticky thing. So those have been really good. I have to put a new sticky thing in mine in case these. Yeah, yeah. Look it up. I like buying them at Walmart. They're, I think that when you first buy the little unit, it's a little bit pricey, but um, yeah, my father-in-law had some problems with pantry moths. Although I gave him the better solution for pantry moths. The Zevo light worked too. Um, so yeah, a lot of those pest control things don't really work, but I have to say the Zevo blue light does work. So, all right, are you guys ready for some Quilter's newsletter magazine? Like I said, this is a good one. Let's see. Let me get all combobulated here. Um, we'll have. Oops. We'll have a number of things to read, including this article about. Oh, why does it want to do that? Okay, here we go. And make sure I have that one up. Okay, I think we're good to go. Alrighty. So, all right, here we go. So this is September 1975, and by this point, we've watched a few, or watched a few. We've looked at a few. At this point, they've got the color photography. There's still a lot of black and white inside, but they've got the color photography by 1975. So, I'm trying to think. It was like between 73 and 74. Well, from 72 to 73, and then 73 to 74, they made a lot of changes. But in 72, 71, 72, they were still Quilter's newsletter. And then, they've quickly evolved. And there's a couple things I noted in here that a lot more patterns. The armchair shopping, remember that was just that back page. That has totally changed now. It's not the back page anymore. So yeah, you can see by this point, the Lehmans really had a very successful magazine. And you can see also the price has gone up by 75 cents. It was 50 cents. So, yeah. And look at this quilt. When I first grabbed the magazine, and I literally did not consciously choose this one. I was like, we're going to do Quilter's newsletter magazine and it's going to be a surprise. So I literally just pulled one out and I was like, oh, 75. This is good. But at first glance at this quilt, I was like, meh. I still don't necessarily love the colors. There's just something about like, I don't know, this color combination that I'm not in love with. But the more and more I look at it, I really do like this. And you could see there's one or two funky things. There's this row here, and then there's this row here. And you can see like it was probably their bias edges on those triangles, because these type of triangles, you can end up with more than one bias edge depending on how you cut these. You can end up with 3 bias edges, but you're trying to get, I mean, your goal is to get the two perpendicular, right? The two perpendicular lines to be, or edges to be like on the straight of grain, and then that diagonal one, because these are 45 degrees, that diagonal one then to be the bias. But again, depending on how you cut these, in theory, you could end up with multiple bias edges with triangles. So I think they did a great job here, with just a little bit of some easing that happened here. You can see some little blips in here, in the quilting, but and I'm not trying to pick this apart. It's like when I see these kinds of things, I'm like, I don't feel as bad about my work, right? Because um this was on the front of a magazine, right? um so Pama says he left that quilt. Mary doesn't like primary color combinations. She said it reminds her of a circus, but I do like it. Oops. Okay, there we go. Oh, Drew. Okay, so yes, the dish soap and vinegar trap of for fruit flies. I know that works too. It is good. And Robin's saying it didn't work for her. You know what I bet it is, Robin? You were in a drier climate, and Druid and I are in a more humid climate, and I bet that has something to do with it. It's got to be like the humidity in the air must carry the scent farther or something. I don't know. I could be totally wrong about that. Um, so larger versus centaurs. Yeah, I think they stop working after a little bit because it doesn't. I think it's like the fermentation, and the fermentation stops. Um, that's when. Yeah. And yes, it's so gross when they drop into coffee. I hate that. All right. So back to the magazine. So let's see. Let me tell you about this quilt first, because they always do have that in here. Or usually they do. Let's see. Yes, on the cover. This is called Amish Triangles Quilt. So this time period, Amish quilts are, people are starting to pay attention to them. And I think you get into this, like, after the bicentennial and pushing into the 80s, you get into this real Amish craze. So this says Amish Triangles Quilt, 74 by 94, collected in Ohio circa 1930, from the collection of Bryce and Donna Hamilton, Tipton, Iowa. So, so this would have been out of an Amish community in Ohio. So, let us move inside, because there's something exciting in here. So first of all, 1975 is the 6th, or September 75 is the 6th anniversary of Quilter's newsletter magazine. And it's funny. Apparently, the Lehmans started this newsletter when Bonnie Lehman was probably like 20 months pregnant. It sounds like, because her son was born the day that the newsletter went out. So it seems like she probably was working on that first issue of the newsletter all the way up to the point where she gave birth to this child in this picture. And I'm trying to remember, what is his name? Matthew. So, Quilts and Other Comforts is the Lehman's company where they sold, other quilting stuff besides just the newsletter. They had, kits and all kinds of supplies. And they were doing really well. And I think all the way up to the point where they sold the assets. So you see, this is the Lehman's son, Matthew. And these are kit quilts here on the wall. And this one here on the right-hand side with the flowers is interesting, at least to me. And it's so, okay, this one is the Ruby Short McKim quilt. But the one that's on the wall is the Flower Garden quilt. And they're saying like the Provincial Applique quilt top kit, but I believe it's called Flower Garden 2 or something like that. In any event, there are 3 quilts in this series. And I have the other 2. I believe I have the kit for one of them, and I have the 2 quilts done out of this series. This is the more simple one. Of the ones I have, it's more of like it's like a tree. It's kind of like a tree of life sort of thing. And then the other one, they're kind of like lilies, sort of. But the 3 of them went together, and yeah, I love them. They're in the fabric, of course, is that ubiquitous 1970s repro fabric that I love. I don't know that anybody else does. Every time I sew something with them, um, friends who were quilting in the 70s, including my mother, will be like, "Oh, we have so much of that fabric." And I'm like, "Give it all to me. Give it all to me." All right, so I'm going to read The Needle's Eye because I really love Bonnie Lehman's art, her little letter here. So remember, this is September of 75. Dear friends, whatever happened to the summer? It hardly seems possible that it is almost time for the children to start back to school again and that summer is on the wane. So I'm assuming she's writing this in August, but I'm like, anymore. They've been back in school, by this point. Time also for me to begin planning our annual birthday quilt pattern this year to celebrate Quilter's newsletters and Matthew's 6th birthday on September 21st. We hope you will help us celebrate by sending in your self-addressed stamped envelope with birthday written on the outside. We will send you the pattern as our birthday gift because we like to say thank you for being with us another year. So this is another one of those things. Remember the Christmas patterns for the Christmas Memories quilt. They offered those. You sent the self-addressed stamped envelope, and I can't remember. They might have required some money for that one. I can't remember, but it was obviously not very expensive. So that was just a cool thing that the Lehmans were always offering things like that where I didn't necessarily see that kind of thing out of other quilting magazines that came later. Our new readers may not know that Matthew is our youngest child who was born the same day the first Quilter's newsletter was published. It is our custom to show his picture this time each year so his friends can see he is growing along with Quilter's newsletter. This year we took his picture in a corner of our shop, Quilts and Other Comforts, and it is on page 2. So of course this is what we're looking at. Reader Barbara Lothrop recently sent us a photograph of a quilt she saw at a show and fell in love with. She asked us to identify it if we could and suggested we print the pattern. We agreed with her about it being a lovely quilt, so we drafted the pattern from her photo, and it's on page 17, so we will see it. However, we can't find this quilt in any of our reference books, so we can't name it. If any of you know the name of this pattern, we hope you will write. So we'll look at it. I didn't, because I was just jumping into this magazine today. I don't know if it's in Brackman's Encyclopedia. That will probably have to be an offline search. But if I get a chance, I will look and see if I can find it, because I'm certain by this point a name has been found. If any of you know the name of the pattern, we hope you will write. Jean Dubois, a frequent contributor to Quilter's newsletter, has written us about the red, white, and blue quilt in the July issue. She says, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the quilt on the cover of the July issue. That's Tippa Canoe and Tyler, too, whose portrait I look for in practically every museum in the country. So I'm not sure. I think I have this issue, this July issue. I'll have to look for it and see. It must be a historic quilt that's on the cover of that issue. It was an old North County English strippy pattern, which became extremely popular in the 1840s in this country and picked up its American name from the political campaign of that year. The only other photo I ever found was a dim old thing in Finley, old patchwork quilts, in which the alternate strips were made with a boldly patterned chintz. The star in the Finley quilt is set on the diagonal. We call this quilt Stars and Stripes, and I'm glad Jean let us know its correct name. I recently saw some information about, and this is great, you guys are going to love this. I recently saw some information about reducing the size of patterns in artisan crafts, which I would like to pass on to you. Now, let's put this into context, and I'm sure many of you will have the same situation. I have a printer, scanner, copier, all-in-one thing sitting up here on a shelf by my desk. I'm ready to beat it with a bat because it doesn't work properly sometimes. And I had a horrible paper jam today. But nonetheless, this printer probably cost me, I don't know, about $100. Um, it is not perfect, but in terms of like just making copies of reducing or enlarging the size of patterns, easy peasy, right? I could do it in 2 seconds. So here's what she says. So reducing the size of patterns in artisan crafts. So I guess this is another magazine, which I would like to pass on to you. Several brands of photocopy machines will reduce the size of patterns or designs as it copies them. The Minolta the Minolta 1714 will reduce 20 to 50% and enlarge up to 40%. The Olivetti 2R, Xerox 7000, Pitney Bowes 362 or 363, and the SCM 311-R also reduced designs from 27.5% to 50%. 27.5% to 50%. Perhaps one of these machines is in your local library or bank. You know, I'm thinking about that. Yeah, you used to be able to go to the bank to make copies of stuff. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but I do remember that when I was little, that because they didn't necessarily have office supply stores. And I think the one that we had in my town was not really, it was like a stationary store, not so much like office supplies. It's a little bit different. So anyway, local library or bank, or possibly in a store or business in your area where you could get copies made should the need arise. And then she says Artists and Crafts is a very fine magazine published by Harry and Barbara Brabeck, in which readers exchange craft ideas and information and find solutions to their craft problems. And it says it was published quarterly. I don't know that I've ever seen this magazine, although haven't looked. So maybe you guys know. All right. So moving right along. So this ad, this is a 2-page ad. And it's funny because the way they inserted it, they didn't insert it as a spread where, you open it up and the ad is on both pages. It's the front and back of this page, which, like, I wonder if that's what they intended. I don't know. But, so this is 1776 United States, 1878 Elian Walker. And let me read the ad to you because Elian Walker, today they are not what they used to be. Today, last time I looked them up, they were still manufacturing some textile related stuff, but I think in this case, much of their business went overseas, and they drastically changed what the company, how it operates. But at this time, Ely Walker was a big deal. So this is what the ad says. When our country celebrates its 200th birthday next year, Elian Walker will be only 2 years away from celebrating its 100th birthday. 1878 is the year Elian Walker was founded. Back in those days, we even had our own cotton fields to help supply the tremendous amount of fiber needed to go into our work clothes and into the many bolts of calico, gingham, muslin, and other fabrics of the time. And so I think the work clothes is still, like, kind of still have some business there. I feel like when I looked, and I could be misremembering this, but I feel like they were like those sort of those like cowboy type shirts, the ones with the pearl buttons. It's not just cowboys that wear them, but they're sort of that Western wear kind of shirts. I think that's one of the products they were making. So, since 1878, there has been a bunch of changes. Okay. Today, Elian Walker is known across the nation as a major manufacturer and distributor of a lot more than work clothes and piece goods. Now our lines also include dress and active sportswear for men and boys, children's wear, women's casual wear, and home furnishings. And our fabrics range the spectrum from the most advanced 100% synthetics to the newest in blends and the purest 100% cotton. As a quilter, you are more likely interested in our all-cotton quadriga cloth. Now, quadriga cloth, if you look that up, you'll find some on eBay. There's always somebody selling the sample cards. Quadriga was something that they made throughout the 20th century, and it was kind of like their, I don't know, they're top of the line. I don't know what it was about Quadriga that was so special other than the fact it was 100% cotton. Um, I don't know, but you'll see it referenced like in the 30s and 40s that they were making it. And obviously again here in the 70s. So they must have made it all along. So the all cotton quadriga cloth in solids or calicos. So we are reintroducing you to these on the next page. When you shop for quilting goods at your fabric store, look for the name Elian Walker and for the same name in your favorite department store when you shop for your family. Now, I have never seen Elian Walker branded clothing, so I don't know where it was sold. Was it sold at Penny's or Sears or Montgomery Wards? I don't know. I've never seen a label for Elian Walker, but after all, with nearly 100 years' experience behind us, we believe we've learned how to make the best product for the money, and that should keep us in business for the next 100 years. Unfortunately not. Well, they are still in business, but not in the same way that they were back in this point. Look at this! Ah! So first of all, is that like the most 1970s outfit this woman is wearing? And let's zoom in here and look at these patterns. I realize this is kind of blurry, but I think you don't necessarily need this to be super good resolution to see that you should probably recognize these prints. If you like the 70s, if you were quilting in the 70s, if you have any fabric from the 70s, it's probably something like this. My grandmother had I think an apron out of this blue. Although I think she had the green colorway. These reds, oh my gosh, so many of them. The yellow I think this is a different one than some of the predominant one I have. But I feel like the yellow was the one that was the yellow and this red were probably the best, the least 1970s looking prints, reproduction prints. In some cases, Ely Walker was making 100-year prints, which means they just never stopped manufacturing them from 1878 to on. So I've asked people a number of times, show me one of the 100-year prints, and I have gotten different answers. So, but I think that the ones that are such close, they look so close are actually the ones they're showing in this photo. So, and I think that maybe that quadriga cloth has something to do with that. Also, look at her shoe. I don't know if this is a boot or a clog or something, but it's bright yellow. I love it so much. And here, they're talking about your grandmother remembers. She may even remember her grandmother in quadriga cloth. Maybe quadriga started in the 1800s, but I kind of felt like the ads I've seen from the 30s and 40s were talking about, how new it was. So yeah, I can't, my mom's grandmother, I mean, at this time, this is an ad for a woman like my mother in the 70s. This is around the time she started quilting. So I'm thinking, okay, her grandmother definitely was born in 1890 something, I think. So she could have used quadriga, but her grandmother or her mother, I kind of doubt it. I don't know. I just think it's funny to look at these ads, right? So they're saying, quad who? Cloth, you ask? Quadriga, a grand old name you might have missed with so much talk today about newfangled blends. Quadriga cloth is as old-fashioned as you can get, 100% cotton and a wide assortment of colorful calico prints. As quaint and prim as the first girl who ever swirled it in a square dance skirt in 36 and 45-inch widths. It sells at a totally out-of-date price per yard. See it at your nearest fabric shop or department store. Quadriga cloth. The look you've been wanting for today and didn't know how to find. I love it. Okay. What do we have next? I liked this. This cool quilting pattern. So this is just a quilting template, but look how they've shown you the ways that you can put it together. So you can make this almost wreath looking thing would fill a square block. This orientation probably would fill a border, could keep them going in a border. And then this, I guess, could be a border too. Um, so yeah, I thought this was pretty neat. And they're mentioning trapunto. And I have to agree, like these kind of open areas in the tulips and the leaves, perfect for trapunto to like stuff that. So very cool. And this one, so this particular issue, and I think we're at that point in the lifetime of this magazine that this is chock full of patterns. Definitely those really early ones did not have nearly as many patterns as this. So we have a Anyone Can Quilt book by the makers of Mountain Mist, which the makers of Mountain Mist, of course, are Stearns and Foster, the people that make mattresses. It was really funny when I first realized that. I was like, wait a minute, Stearns and Foster, like the mattress people. It's I mean, it should come as no surprise that in manufacturing, these big companies, they do multiple things, right? Just funny that, yeah. So this was another thing, Catherine Wheel's Gutchen Patchworks. I feel like that Beth and Jeffrey Gutchen, I know their names, and I feel like they wrote some books about Amish patterns, which this is not. So they must have done other things. It says from the authors of The Perfect Patchwork Primer. That's what it says up here. Oh, did I cut it off? I guess I cut off the top of this. Sorry about that. But it says this at the top. It says from the authors of The Perfect Patchwork Primer. So maybe I have that book or I've seen that book. I'm not sure. But in any event, this is a cool looking pattern. Also full of Y seams. and and just looking at this, I don't see any way around Y seams unless you cut this block up in a different way. So here you've got, they're like, I guess, kind of these narrow parallelograms and then this other parallelogram. And so you're kind of having to inlay them almost as you piece them. I think if you were to use modern piecing techniques on this, these would be half square triangles. Or maybe like a stitch and flip situation. And then you'd be able to add this on just on top of this square with these other pieces, right? I don't know, for you guys that do some piecing, yeah, I think that's how I do it. But yeah, Y seams. Okay, what do we have next? Oh, so what's happening in news? So I thought this always jumps out to me, towns in my state. So Columbia, Maryland, which is sort of, it's kind of directly south of Baltimore City, in Howard County. And at this time, in the 70s, Columbia was a planned community. Like Columbia, I think, had just kind of come into being. It is... no, I seems for Robin. Yes, I know. I feel you. I know how to sew Y seams. I actually took a class, and especially on a sewing machine, but also hand sewing. It's just a matter of like making sure you know where you're supposed to stop, and having it marked well. But yeah, it's just if you have any bias edges, they stretch, and inserting it in there inevitably, no matter how carefully you cut and mark, yes, it wants to be funky. So, Columbia was at the time, I think, just becoming like this planned community. So I imagine this faithful circle of quilters, and it says it's a chapter of the National Quilting Association, will hold their fourth quilt show. So I'm assuming that this must have been, like a community quilting group, because that's just how this community was put together. As like, I think in some cases they were people that worked in DC, like federal federal government workers that, they flee the city for Maryland, or they flee the city for Northern Virginia. And so Columbia became like that. And so I can see these like affinity groups popping up. And so Faithful Circle quilters must have been together for a while. I'm interested to know if they're still around, if they were maybe absorbed into another group. So the second grade class at Sydney Fenn School in Medina, Ohio, made this quilt. Fabric crayons were used by the children to draw scenes. Solid green squares used alternately, and the town is known as the sweetest town on earth because of its bee industry. So the quilting is beehives and bees. I thought that was so cute, and they were going to display it during the bicentennial. So, let's see, did they have, I don't know who this woman is. Oh, maybe this is Myrtle Steeles? I'm not sure. Okay. We'll skip that. Double knits. Are you guys ready? Oh, I love it. So, look at these. Like, at first glance, like, forget you see double knits here. These don't strike me as double knits, especially this one. This fan, I would not guess it was a double knit just looking at it, in the picture. And then this one, even though, it's more simplified, and once you know it's a double knit, you can be like, okay, I can see that, just the name and the horse. And do you notice that this is a Charlie Brown theme? You've got Snoopy on the doghouse. I'm assuming this is Charlie Brown. This is Lucy. And then here's Snoopy as Joe Cool. And April 4th, 1965. I mean, I don't remember when Peanuts became I know it was a comic strip a long time before, but I want to say 65 might have been around the time when, like, that book, was it Love is a Warm Puppy or something like that, came out. Do you guys remember that? My dad's little sister was a teenager when I was born, so she always had cool stuff, like, that also appealed to me as a child, like the Snoopy and Peanuts and stuff. So I remember her having that book. So I don't know if this is that time period. So 65 maybe was a big popularity of Peanuts. I don't know. There's also, it looks like the YMCA logo up here. Anyway, let us read. I'll zoom in on this interesting quilt. All right. So this is a report on double knits in quilts. So I assume this is written by Bonnie Lehman, or like kind of her staff writers. I want to say like her mother might have done some writing too. See, Druid says the first Peanuts comic strip was published in 1950. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was sometime in the 50s. So yeah, like, so then it's like you're 15 years later then, in 1965. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what, let's see, Peanuts gained popularity throughout the 1950s. 1960s established its golden age and peak in global mainstream. Okay, so yeah, then in 65 it would have been highly sought after by youngsters and probably adults alike, I think. I mean, who doesn't love Peanuts? All right, so report on double knits in quilts. 25 readers have written us to share their experiences in using double knits for quilts. All of them were enthusiastic about this fabric and say it is easy to work with. Not always. Not always. Here are some of their suggestions and photos. Oh, 1965, the characters appeared on the cover of Time. Okay, all right. So then, yes, you've not only got this global sensation, but yeah. So when something's on Time magazine, it means your parents not only know about it, but your grandparents do too. Okay, so there's suggestions and photos, and I'll show you again 3 of my quilts and tell you what the problems are. Okay, so Mrs. R.J. Conley of Splendora, Texas, I love that, Splendora, says she has used a large hexagon pattern, 4.5 inches on each side, to cut knits. This shape goes together easily and looks quite attractive and appropriate in this modern fabric. Either a random or planned color arrangement is satisfactory. Ruth K. Aschenbeck Jr., Wayzata, Minnesota, recommends trying a traditional fan pattern. So this must be hers. Um, yeah, trying a traditional fan pattern in knits. The photo at right shows one she made, which is a copy of Fanny's fan made by her grandmother in Dakota Territory. She writes, "My mother did the piecing and had no trouble with seams at all. She did steam iron thoroughly, and I covered each seam with embroidery." Now I'm interested to know. If you got an iron hot enough for steam, would you not be melting your double knit? I don't know. Could you? I mean, this is where you, the joy of double knit was pulling it right out of the dryer, right? It doesn't wrinkle. So I'm wondering about like actually like using steam on it. Mabel M. Kent, New Jersey, suggests crocheting 5-inch squares of double knits together with variegated pearl cotton number 5. Put a row of single crochet around each square, then crochet 2 squares together. No lining or filler is required if you try this method. So that's interesting. Sarah Beth Tennyson of Camarillo, California, thinks the best pattern pieces are a basic square, a rectangle twice that size, and a larger square 4 times the size of the basic square. Her quilt pictured at left shows her random arrangement of these patches, which she decorated with applique for her daughter. So that's the Snoopy quilt. And you know what I just realized? Oh, I thought it was, well, I think, is that a flower or a boat anchor? I can kind of go either way with that. Whatever that is. This looks like tennis rackets. I don't know. Those are kind of interesting. I do love this Joe Cool, though. That's very cute. From Roche, Missouri, Hope Campbell writes that her favorite crazy quilts are great made up from knits. She covers a large background block with shapes, bastes them down, and then covers all seams with a decorative stitch on the sewing machine. So Robin's going to say it's an anchor. Yeah, I think, because I guess what makes it, well, I guess what I decides it for me is this little line here, but also that could be like what do you call this? The calyx of the flower? I don't know. Probably help if we knew what color it was. It's obviously white on something. I'm guessing it's probably like blue or red, but okay. Here's some more. Oh my gosh, this bear's paw. Look at that. Again, I would not have guessed that is double knit. I mean, obviously the resolution's not great. Okay. Any variation of drunkard's path works up nicely in double knit fabrics, as well as the tic-tac-toe pattern illustrated in the April issue of Quilter's newsletter. The tic-tac-toe pattern. I wonder if that's just like a 9 patch. I feel like maybe that's what that is. So that is reported by Mary L. Danley from Austin, Texas. She advises sewing all curved seams 3/16 of an inch wide by hand, but straight seams can be done on the machine. Press each block as you complete it. Set your steam iron on wash and wear temperature. Yes, very important. And use something porous like a handy wipe for a press cloth, she says. Oh, interesting. Okay. Snoopy's Joe Cool made his first appearance in the Peanuts comic strip published on May 27th, 1971 by Charles M. Schulz. In fact, Joe Cool didn't just have a debut comic strip, he had a debut arc. Well, that's interesting because that is Joe Cool. That is 100% Joe Cool, right? He's got a little shirt and sunglasses, right? Am I just making this up? Am I having a Mandela effect situation? I mean, this is 1965, and that's maybe Charles Schulz saw this quilt and went, I'm gonna do something like that with Snoopy. You never know. Okay. this lady's name. Oh, bless her. Or it's Mr. Peabody. Huh. Dog was not named until November 1950 and was almost named Sniffy. Oh, I think Snoopy's cuter. It's Sniffy. Interesting. This poor lady, her name, Mrs. Orvella Puff, Washington, Illinois, tells us that double knits make lovely applique quilts. She says the edges of the applique do not have to be turned under to hold the stitch, and they do not ravel. Not true. Not true. Double knit does ravel. The Dresden plate is my favorite pattern for knits, and now I'm making the patch basket running. I'm making the patch basket running in Quilter's newsletter. So that must have been like a block of the month kind of thing. Several readers reported that knits are particularly suitable for the old biscuit or bun quilt, which you guys may be familiar with. They suggest using 3 and 4 inch squares or 5 and 6 inch squares together. The simple 9 patch is another favorite. These quilts are usually tied. If you're not familiar with the biscuit or the bun quilt, what it is you have your backing fabric is one size, so like 5 inches, and the front fabric is, the back fabric is like 4 inches, and the front fabric is 5 inches. And what you're doing is you're taking a pleat in each side to bring it down to 4 inches, or it's whatever size. It's just the ratio is 1 inch bigger for the top, and then you stuff it, and then you seam them all together, and so they make like this puffy thing. They look like biscuits made out of fabric. Aesop Rocky, several years ago, Met Gala, he wore as a cape this quilt that had been discovered at a thrift store by Zach Foster. And I think Zach Foster, I don't know how he made it into a cape, but he just made it into a cape, I guess. And Aesop Rocky wore it. It was a biscuit quilt. And ironically, I think I read that the girl whose grandmother had made it, or the woman whose grandmother had made it, recognized it when she saw it. I guess she knew it had gone to a thrift store. So anyway, I like the idea of the biscuit quilt. Yeah. Other readers advise sewing the knit patches onto a background block by butting the edges and covering the joining with zigzag stitches. They say this eliminates any bulkiness in seams and that it is easy to make patches fit together precisely because of the slight stretchiness of the fabric. Mamie Metcalf, oh, that's another good name, Orvella Puff and Mamie Metcalf, Holbrook, Arizona, has worked out a practical way to make quilt-as-you-go blocks with knits. Her method is described in detail in this month's lesson on page 20. Oh, I missed that. I'll have to check that out as we go. Above, one of 10 knit patch quilts, so it's this one here. This is one of 10 knit patch quilts made by Elsie Herlick of Pueblo, Colorado. And this one looks like she took the time to make this like symmetrical. Some are color arranged like this one, others with alternating rows of dark and light colors, some in 9 patch blocks. She ties them with 2-ply yarn. So then the bear's paw in Grandmother's Flower Garden. So this is the Grandmother's Flower Garden. So above Bear's Paw and below Grandmother's Flower Garden Variation, both quilts were made from double knits by Catherine Gibbs of Graham, Alabama. She writes, I made the bear's paw for my husband's birthday and he loves it. The back is pieced also. Oh my Lord. Can you imagine a front and back pieced double knit? She writes, I made the bear's paw for my husband's birthday and he loves it. The back is pieced also from squares the same size as the bear's paw blocks. Mrs. Gibbs tried something new with the flower garden. She lined it with a pre-quilted polyester tricot and did not fill it. She said the quilt is very light and soft, that it was quite easy to quilt it in her lap without a hoop. She quilted around each flower. This quilt won her first prize at the West Georgia Fair in 1973. And you could see there's her ribbon right in the middle of the quilt. So, without color pictures, I don't know that I would have guessed any of them on this page were double knit. And the bear's paw especially, like that's kind of intricate in my opinion. Because here's the thing about double knit. It is not like you can't starch it. The edges can kind of be wiggly. I mean, granted it's a tough fabric. Um, but it is in my opinion not that easy, not as easy to work with as say like a cotton. A quilting cotton will do what you want it to do. So while we're here, let us look at Stephanie's double knits. So, and as I said, this is just 3 of the ones I have. Um, Padma, happy birthday! Yes, let me give the code for the exhibit. Well, it was the grandmother's flower garden that she got. She got the prize for the bear's paw she made for her husband. So this particular quilt is an example of let's just throw together whatever kind of crap we have. Because, I mean, look at this. There's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason. There's a lot of different fabrics in this quilt. And I'm sitting here thinking like of the colors that are in here, I can picture the things that my mom and my grandmother used to sew. So the black and the blue were most definitely pants. The brown too, and maybe the green. They were most definitely pants, possibly a pantsuit. These plaids. My grandmother had at least 1 or 2 full-blown plaid pantsuits made out of this. And then these other ones were often like shirts or, jackets and like blazer kind of things and dresses. My grandmother had so many of these dresses and they were like, and I want to say like she used the same pattern. She and my mom both made them. It was just like a sort of just a, like an A-line. I don't even know if it was an A-line necessarily, just like a sheath type dress with short little cap sleeves, and she would line them sometimes. And so she made them out of like just tons of different prints. And I have the scraps. The other thing that's interesting about this is there is this piece of rickrack all the way on around the edge, which if I remember correctly, I haven't had this quilt out in a long time. If I remember correctly, the rickrack is glued on. Just got to be the craziest thing. Like, why would you go to the trouble of sewing all of these squares together to just glue something to it? It is also enormous. So, you see how much it's pulled on the ground. I want to say that's at least 2.5 feet here on the ground. Um, these cruddy stand things that I have, I think goes up to like, I think it's 9 feet or 9.5 feet. So this thing is a good 12 feet long. I mean, again, this is just a thing where like the person making it or people making it just kept making it and went, oh, maybe we should stop. This is big enough for 3 beds and not just 1. Or maybe it was a California king size. I don't know. So here is a detail shot, and you can see closer what some of these fabrics look like. I don't know. I mean, I have this affinity. I do not, under any circumstances, want to wear polyester like this. But I do have this affinity for like just the different kinds of like weaves and textures you could get with this fabric. I think one of the other ones has better textured fabrics, but look at this. I mean, they're almost like, I just saw one over here. Yeah. So like this white fabric, if you can see it, it's got this like interesting texture. If I remember correctly, this white one with the each of those little dots is almost like a little fuzzy nub. Um, so they were doing really interesting things with this fabric, despite the fact that it's terrible for the environment. It truly will be here until we're all dead. It's made out of coal tar. Now, if you're following along with me and Jill reading the Mauve book, you'll get the joke. But yeah, it's just it's a horrible fabric. I have tons of it because nobody wants to sew with it anymore because it's just terrible. Um anyway, I thought this was a fun print here. And let's have some more. Yeah, here's a close up of that that lovely glued on rickrack. And it's like a big chunky rickrack. All right. Oh, here was a little bit more. Yeah, I thought this one was cool. This looks almost like a cable pattern on a quilt. And one more. Okay. This is so this one is got batting and a backing, and it is tied. Um, and probably took them their lifetime to tie it, because every single every single block, and they're pretty small blocks. Like, I want to say they're probably like 3 or 4 inch blocks, I guess. I mean, and each square. So the blocks are probably like 6 inch blocks. Um, what better thing to make from, well, exactly. That's the thing. Like, my grandmother with her scraps, she would make lap quilts. When she had an aunt that she was very, very close to, and she ended up in a nursing home because she had cancer, and her care at her home was difficult. So she was in the nursing home for treatment and rehab. Um, and like, elderly people get cold. So, and there's the spills and all the things that happen in a nursing home. So my grandmother started making these lap quilts, and pillows. And so that kind of what, this reminds me of. But yeah, like, it's indestructible. Well, almost indestructible once it's sewn together. And you can just throw this stuff in the in the washing machine. It doesn't shrink unless you've got some issues with the structural integrity. It will never come apart. Yeah. And I like this one too. I think this one, I like the other one as well. For all of its like bleh. I like the other one too. But I think this one, I mean, I would say they spent some time laying it out so that these black and navy blue and purple are kind of spread out some, and that the pastels are worked in there. But this one does have issues. Let me zoom in here and show you. So this one has separated. This particular fabric it's not the seams that are the problem. The fabric itself has separated. And what happens if you are a person who has never experienced the glory of double knit? Double knit is essentially, I mean, the way it's constructed, it's woven, I guess, or knit. I mean, it's knit. Um, and I don't know. I mean, I think the term double knit, I guess it means the fiber itself, I think, because when I think of other types of fabric that are double anything, like double gauze, if you've ever experienced it, cotton double gauze is a beautiful fabric. It feels so nice. It's also kind of a pain to sew with, but it's literally two separate pieces of cotton gauze fabric that have been interlocked during the weaving. So you can almost pull them apart, but they're like interlocked at little spots, almost like a tied quilt. But double knit, I think the double part comes from, I think, the fiber itself. I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. So if you think about a pair of nylons or tights, if that knit gets picked, it can run like a nylon, or it can just start a hole and just rip open like a sweater. If you like unraveled a sweater. So that I see on some of these quilts is happening. My big comforter has one spot that's like that. And this quilt in particular has a lot. And then I have another one that's got some of the same damage. So they aren't actually indestructible, but this one in particular has so many different fabrics. They are repeated, but not a lot. That's the fascinating thing, is that they're repeated in the blocks themselves, but if you look, like, the reds and oranges are all different. And not to say that there aren't repeated fabrics in here, but I don't think there are very many. Like, this blue is different from this blue, although I think this blue and this blue are the same. So whoever made this had access to a lot of different scraps. And my guess is this was probably a lady in a community of other makers, and they all had, this kind of stuff. Padma's got some details. So double knit fabric is knit fabric made with 2 sets of needles. Okay. Creating 2 layers of fabric knitted together. It's thicker, more stable. Okay. And less likely to curl than single knits, right? Yeah, with stretch but good structure. Yeah, so if you cut it, and stretch it does curl a little bit. And actually the thinner versions will curl a bit. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I think I have some right behind me here. So, well, let me finish showing you this and then we'll take a look at this. And this is another example. This fabric here, um, this is a polyester, but I don't think it's, whatever it is, it's not actually a double knit. So this one in particular, this almost looks woven. Like, I think it actually is. So this might be some type of upholstery fabric now that I'm looking closely at it. But it's definitely synthetic. And so it is just shredded for whatever reason. The double knit probably did its work. And then this is another enormous quilt. This one's a top only. Woven upholstery fabric. Yeah, I think that is what it is. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 of those fabrics in it. At one time, this was my favorite. Although since then, I have gotten another one that is my actual favorite because it is insane. And I don't have a picture of that one, unfortunately, but it's packed away right now. But I need to pull it out and take a picture because it's crazy. And it's actually made of, I guess it's still considered double knit, but it's or maybe it isn't. They're polyester, but it's like the shirt fabrics, like the shiny, lighter weight polyester. And I don't think there's a repeat in it anywhere. There's so many fabrics. But this one I love because this is a trip around the world, and this is very carefully and clearly thought out. Um, and yeah, I think it's lovely, and what they did. So like, it's not consistent, but the way that the directions that the texture in these goes, and it's a really pretty quilt. These are some close-ups of it, and these blocks or the squares themselves are probably about 2 inches, so they're small. It's I would say the trip around the world is probably a little bit bigger than a standard um, cotton one. So this was a fun fabric here. This is just another close up. I love this pink. Oh no, X-rays. Okay, Robin. I hope everything's okay. Fingers crossed. This green and white one is also very cool. The cat is back. And okay, so that was the last one. And let's go back to me for a second so we can look at this. So I'm looking here. You know what? I guess it is. I guess it is kind of a double layer. I don't know how to better describe this if you don't have a piece of double knit in front of you to take a look at. But it's like when you stretch it, you can tell there's like, but the thing is, the layers don't pull apart. Unlike, like I was saying, like a double gauze, a double cotton gauze. So they don't really pull apart. But yeah, along the edge, you can see that it's like 2 sets of, yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Robin. Yeah, you too. I mean, I presume you're going to be having better weather than we are. But yeah, so good luck with your x-rays, and I hope everything's okay. Um this cat this cat is sending you love. All right. Well, that is double knit quilts for you. So let's look at the patterns. There's a ton of patterns in here. This cat, I guess, doesn't want to go on the back. She just wants to be held. So we can abide. So this one's fun. This is it says collector's reprint. Lavender, what does it say? Lavender lace flower. And this is a Nancy Cabot pattern. Which would have been most likely in the newspaper. And let's see, does it say 1930? Nancy Cabot. I think so. Nancy Cabot and Nancy Page were kind of the two that were really popular during this time period. I know sometimes they were printed in the newspaper, and then other times you'd have to like send away, 10 cents for the pattern. But this one's really, I think this one's really cool. And look how fun it would be to do this in like all these different colors. And it's a simple applique pattern too. If you did like a raw edge applique, very simple. But this is the kind of thing that's kind of fun to practice your curves if you were doing needle turn. So this one is old time quilting. This one is called Prairie Queen. It got you some good old Y seams there. And when you get into these kinds of like these angles, it's really hard not to do Y seams. Today certainly there's designers that will, cut things up in such a way, where you'll do a little bit more of like geometric, like square type piecing, or flip and turn corners and stuff. But I don't know. Some of these, I don't think there's really any way to get away with, not having to deal with the Y seam. Prairie Queen. So it says this pattern is at least 38 years old. Okay, so 1975, it was only 38 years old. It was pictured in the Household magazine for March 1937. Can you hear this cat, you guys? She is she's purring like crazy. Okay, this is called, this is great. This is modern quilting. I love, so I think back to Dr. Dunton. He was looking at like the Nancy Cabot and Nancy Page designs as modern quilting. The stuff that was in the newspaper. So like this Nancy Cabot, he was looking at things like that as modern quilting, which I think is hilarious. So at this point, they're looking at this as modern quilting. And I guess she's considering, or they're considering this modern quilting, like it's kind of a star, but it's lopped off here. And what is this? Is it an Ohio star? That is the square with the points. I'm bad about my star names. But to me, that's what this looks like. It's like the star has been expanded and the points are lopped off so that you have this like zoomed in version. But look how it comes together. This is what it comes together as. And I don't think that I would piece it the way that they say. They've got you piecing, you're cutting the center, and then I don't know. They say here, I guess it doesn't specifically give the instructions, but again, I feel like you've got this like Y seam situation, and I think that I would cut those strip pieces and kind of work those maybe differently. Okay. All right, so we're getting to Grandma's Corner, which I didn't even skim, so I don't even know what Theo Essen has for us this day. We'll just leave it on the square dance. So you might remember that Memories from Grandma's Cupboard by Theo Essen. This is Grandma's Corner. So she says, I wandered through an antique show recently and was immediately transported back to Grandma's kitchen, especially to her cupboard. So many of the treasures on display I remember seeing daily among the hodgepodge we call our everyday dishes. I find myself wondering whatever became of them. Now that I think about it, the colorful, haphazard variety of dishes in the kitchen cupboard remind me in some ways of Grandma's patchwork quilts. We had two kinds of dishes. There was the everyday, mismatched variety that reposed in the kitchen cupboard, and then there was the Sunday best set, along with the big ironstone soup tureen and the huge turkey platter, only used on Thanksgiving and Christmas, that occupied the storage area in the sideboard of the dining room. These, of course, did not include the gorgeous collection of hand painted china plates and cups that ran around the room on a plate rail well out of reach of young hands. Gosh, when was the last time you saw a plate rail? It was the hit and miss variety of dishes in the kitchen cupboard, however, that I loved best. These included 5 or 6 blue willow plates, a few oatmeal bowls, 3 or 4 blue willow saucers, and 2 cups to match, but one of them was handleless. There was, of course, a glass sugar bowl with a silver spoon holder ring around it that was an automatic part of the daily table service. It always fell to my lot to set the table at mealtime. I had a few special favorite dishes, like the small pink rose-sprigged chintz bowl that I always managed to set at my place, an almost exact duplicate of one I saw at the antique show that wore a fantastic price tag. The kitchen knives, forks, and spoons were a hodgepodge too. Mixed in with the dark metal forks and knives with riveted wooden handles was a smattering of real silverware. Childlike, I picked the pretty ones for myself, like the pearl handled knife, the slender spoon with a bunch of grapes on the handle, and a small graceful fork with roses entwined on the handle. Somehow, food eaten with that lovely fork always seemed so elegant, even if one of the tines was slightly bent. These were my favorites until the exciting new rows of Sharon dishes started appearing as premiums in the large family-sized box of Mother's Oats. Um, I don't know when they stopped doing these types of premiums. I would assume that maybe it was like the 50s or the 60s. Um, but I know that at one time, like washing detergents or washing soda, oatmeal, I think maybe even flour and things like that, or maybe not. I think flour and sugar, the fabric bags were kind of the premium there, but um, some of these items would have, like these dishes tucked into them. Or if you bought enough of it, you'd use your little stamps to get whatever this premium was, and a lot of times it was dishes. And I think I have a cup and saucer that my grandmother gave me that came from, I think, Octagon soap, like an Octagon soap box. Kind of interesting. They don't do that anymore. They don't put the prizes in the cereal boxes anymore either. um, so this started appearing as premiums in the large family-sized box of Mother's Oats. Somehow Grandma never seemed to mind that I claimed for myself each new piece of the gold-banded white dishes with a flamboyant half-open rose on each piece. Since we ate oatmeal 365 days a year, we managed to accumulate a goodly number of small plates and saucers, but there was a strange dearth of cups to match. But hoping for one was an enduring thrill each time a new box was opened. Grandma was a farm sale and auction addict, so odds and ends of dishes were always added to the variants that already stocked our kitchen cupboard. But none ever captured my fancy like the little pink sprigged bowl, the little bowl that eventually was to be the cause of a never to be forgotten lesson about selfishness that I was to learn my 12th summer when my beloved cousin Carrie Ann came to visit us. Carrie Ann was pink and white pretty. I envied her long, flyaway blonde hair in contrast to my own dark, heavy braids. On her part, however, she envied my fearlessness of the farm animals and my venturesome tomboy spirit. We got along like a pair of gloves and were constantly scolded by Grandma after we had gone to bed at night for our never-ending bed talk and exchange of confidences. Carrie Ann had been with us for days from when our summer idyll came to an abrupt end. It all started over the pretty little pink chintz bowl. As usual, I had set the table for breakfast, placing the pink bowl at my place. Suddenly I turned and saw Carrie Ann in the act of switching the bowl to her place, giving me her blue willow bowl instead. With Grandma in the kitchen, I couldn't say a word, but I knew an unreasoning burst of anger. I'm sure I was cool and distant to Carrie Ann the rest of the day. And that was just the beginning of a feuding contest between us for possession of that silly little bowl. Each one of us would warily wait for the other one's back to be turned to switch bowls, always, of course, keeping a wary eye on Grandma. Within a few days, Carrie Ann and I were acting like two warring tomcats. Strangely, Grandma didn't even seem to notice, but suddenly and inexplicably, the pink chintz bowl disappeared, vanished. Neither of us said a word, but the atmosphere cleared like magic. Fortunately, the next 2 days were fair days. Carrie Ann and I had the time of our 12-year-old lives, and when she left for home, we were closer than ever. We have maintained the friendship through the years, even though we are separated by the width of a continent. After Carrie Ann left that summer, the offending bowl magically reappeared in the cupboard, but I never again used it with the same possessive pleasure. A few years later, when Carrie Ann was married, I carefully wrapped the bowl and gave it to her as a wedding present, intending it as a sort of joke. But when I saw the tears in her eyes, accompanied by a warm, affectionate hug, I knew that she too remembered our silly childhood feud. Strangely, even today, the little rose chintz bowl has a special meaning for both of us. Over the long years, the bowl has been passed back and forth between us, always at a time of stress or a crisis in the other's life. It has become a wordless message of our love and concern for each other. Remembering the price tag on the twin bowl at the antique show, I realized that a monetary value could never be placed on the little pink, rose-sprigged bowl that Carrie Ann and I still share with each other. That was a very sweet story. Um, I think she struggles sometimes to like make it like quilting related, and so she had to put in that one sentence at the top, which was the haphazard variety of dishes reminded me of Grandma's patchwork quilts. Oh, and I think the cat has the cat hid what I was looking for. No, I probably never opened it again. So let's see, where was I? So we've looked at this and this. There's Square Dance. Okay. So magazine true stories. Yes, they're usually made up of tearjerkers. Yes. So Theo Essen, I think sometimes her stories are like where Grandma was teaching a lesson. And some of her other stories are very much this like sort of nostalgic, these kind of sweet memories. And she wrote, I want to say she wrote this column from like, I think it appeared kind of haphazardly at first. I think it was like one or two issues, and then it wasn't for a while. And I guess people really liked it. Um, and then I think from that point, I think it's probably like 74, 75 on through into the 80s. I want to say she wrote this column like 200 and sometimes maybe. It was quite a few issues that she wrote for. So here we go. This is so this is from Quilts and Other Comforts. So again, this is the Lehman's company, their quilt supply company. So we've got these Nancy Cabot reprints. And then some flower quilt patterns. I thought these birds were interesting. They look like, oh, okay, so they are Ruby McKim. Ruby McKim, I mean, we've kind of looked at her stuff. Her patterns were they were very specific to her artistic style, which was unusual. Some of them I don't love them because they're very like angular. But they are quite popular and very, very collectible. So if you ever run into, and they're always embroidered. So, and there'll be like, there's the birds, there's, I think state flowers. There were those weird Christmas ones. If you ever run across one of them and, it's an affordable price, snap it up because, this, especially the children's, like the crib quilts and stuff, or the Ruby McKim designs are really, really popular. And she was earlier. She was, and it says it here, in the 20s. Yeah, she put together a lot of her stuff in the 20s, whereas some of these later ones, Nancy Cabot, Nancy Page, etc., they were the 30s and on. And by the way, look at this. 1 year of Quilter's newsletter subscription is $6. You can't even buy one magazine for $6 anymore. Much less, I mean, 3 years of Quilter's newsletter in 1975. I mean, I think what a Quilt Folk magazine. Does Quilt Folk even how I don't know. Because I subscribe to Quilt Folk, so I haven't bought a single issue in probably since the very first issue I bought. So I can't remember. Are they $15 or $20 each? They're not cheap. I mean, they don't have advertising, which is why they're more expensive. But um, yeah, they are at least $15, if not more than that. So the times they have changed. Okay, Padma's saying more than 20. Okay. So, yeah. In 75, you could get 3 years of Quilter's Newsletter magazine, which was published, I think, 10 issues a year. It was 10 or 11 issues a year because they would do it was either in the summer or during the holidays, they do a double issue. Here's some more things. I think this is another Ruby McKim. Yeah, these are the Ruby McKim State Flowers. I think I have all of these. I literally trolled the newspaper for these to get all of them. And then here's some other. These are Mrs. Perkins or Ma Perkins. Oh no, these are different names. Okay. Oh, you guys, this I love. So first of all, we have a Sunbonnet Sue doll. Isn't she cute? I'm very curious to know, does she have a face? And then this, I love this so much. I actually have a couple of these. And they're needle books, and they're so cute. I maybe have shown one or more of them off here, but basically, like this little part here is the brim, and it's just flat, and it snaps open, and it's got you know, little pages or leaves for your needles, and then in here, the poofy back of the head part, actually you can kind of open it, even though it's held taut because the brim has like cardboard in it. Even though it's held taut, you kind of open it a little bit and you could put like your thread in there. So it's the cutest thing. And I love the fact there's a typo. So you could buy an already made up needle kit or needle case along with the pattern for $4.50, or you could buy the pattern only for $50. I think it's supposed to be 50 cents. Oh, but that's so cute. Oh, a Needlework surprise package, aka the stuff they can't get rid of. And then metal pattern templates. Anybody out there familiar with these? These are the years before plastic template material or mylar template material. These were actually pieces of tin, flat pieces of tin. I know women whose husbands were metal workers were usually able to make these for them. But if your husband's not a metal worker, doesn't have access to this flat metal stock. I want to say my dad had some from there. It was duct work. So if you think about like the metal that duct work looks like, that's the metal it's made out of. And then they would typically have the backing would be a piece of sandpaper. So when you put it down on your cloth, and actually, I mean, you really think about it, they're kind of nice to have because, pressing a pen or pencil against the edge doesn't deform it like a cardboard pattern piece. And then with the sandpaper on the back, it doesn't slip. So I have to say this old school kind of patterns pieces is kind of cool. This is fun. You could get the catalog for 25 cents. I have a copy of the catalog. They would send this out if you had a subscription. I think they would send it out periodically. And yeah, I feel like it always had the same cover though. I know there were multiple versions of it, but I feel like it had the same cover. In any event, it's a cute catalog. It's of all of their stuff. Got your Quilter's newsletter binder. Yo-yo circles. And this is a book I haven't heard of. The Stitches of Creative Embroidery by Jacqueline Enthoven is a book I have not heard of. I'm going to look that up. So here we go, getting into the bicentennial stuff. So these ladies, it doesn't look like they're doing anything bicentennial, but here we are with this. So we've got oh, what is this? As a real. Um, Often this is oak leaf and real, but this, I guess, is just the real. And then your a spread eagle in 1776. This one is also, I'm guessing. No, you know what? This is not. I thought this was going to be a bicentennial too, but this is actually made of recycled linen calendar dish towels. That's wild. My grandmother used those. All right, Kat, you can't be up there. um, my grandmother always had one of those, and my mom did too. But that's interesting that they made this um, get it in 75. Like I've seen more modern stuff made with these dish towels. So that's fun though. I mean, like certainly they can be used as dish towels when the calendar's done. But that's pretty cool. You can do a quilt. So here's another a bicentennial-ish thing. This is all the presidents to that point, and um, disbelief. What is that, Druid? Um, so this is the president's pieced and appliqué quilt. I'm interested to see. 75 by 93, made of multicolor cotton fabrics from the collection of Artie Foltz. Is that what it says? Artie Foltz Davis, Navasota, Texas. Oh, when I told the cat she could. Indeed, she's actually a well-behaved cat. She's curious about everything on my desk, though. She normally does not do this. I don't know why she's being like this today. Okay, so Artie Foltz Davis of Navasota, Texas, presently at the Star of the Republic Museum in Washington, Texas. This quilt, Historic USA, depicts the signing of the Declaration of Independence for the United States. It was made as a commemorative effort by Fanny and Charles Norman in 1936. Okay. And has been exhibited throughout the United States. Embroidery, patchwork, and applique are skillfully combined to create presidential portraits surrounding a scene from 1776. Interesting. So this is saying, embroidery, patchwork, and applique. So I'm wondering, are these? Now I get that this appears to be applique, but I'm wondering how the faces of the presidents are those. Is all this stuff embroidery? I wonder. Oh, I would be so fascinated to like see this. I have to find out if this quilt is still at the Star of the Republic Museum. Huh. Because I would have guessed, without any information, I would have guessed that this was like some type of like printed panel. Then that was a border was put on it, and then it was quilted. Look, there's a Statue of Liberty in the corners. That's cool. This is the mystery pattern that she mentioned at the beginning. Right, Padma? Great minds. So I don't know what to call this other than it looks kind of like a garden maze, but garden maze does not have this, like, it's almost like a link. And remember on Monday when we were looking at some of the IQM quilts, right? Was that Monday? Remember that Lover's Link quilt that I was just like, how is this made? Not the same way. Definitely not the same way, but it's got that vibe of like, it's like an optical illusion how this stuff locks together. And she's showing here, what the pattern pieces are in this little spot here. So, it's really not that difficult. You've just got a large square with you do flip and turn on those corners. And then this is more difficult simply because you can't you want to put it together like a log cabin, but you can't, because each rectangle is dependent on the next rectangle, clockwise or counterclockwise. So like it's Y seams essentially. So, um, yeah, this one's a challenge to me in thinking of doing this anyway, but Y seams. But otherwise, this is not that challenging of a thing to make. But I'm really curious to know. And I'm kind of thinking, I guess, depending on what kind of fabric colors you use, it almost reminds me of like rattan or something, you know? And then there's this pretty, this pretty little quilting pattern. But it says this quilt looks difficult, but is actually quite easy. It is made from the two basic blocks, which are diagrammed in the drawing. Block size is 6 inches. The border is edged with half blocks. The quilting pattern for the octagon is printed there. Um, Outline quilt, all other pieces. So, yeah, I don't know what that pattern is, but I like it. And I think that it would be very cool in like, some different colors. Okay. So, like I said, chock full of patterns, right? We've looked at a bunch. This one is yet another one. This one's called Memory Chain. And I feel like I've seen some modern quilts that are sort of in this vein. But this one's kind of fun in that, so you've got the schematic down here, which, it's a lot of pieces, but not terribly difficult. You have like a flying geese in there and some what would be like just flip and turn corners. But other than that, it's just squares. Not terribly difficult. But you end up with this really cool looking thing, and it's got it's got that secondary pattern. So depending on what those oval link chain links, how you make those, and then what this background color is, along with those spools, it's basically like a spool with a diamond in the middle, how those pop out, and then those links could recede or vice versa depending on what the colors that you use in this. Or imagine making all of it out of like low volume colors, and then just having these be, these squares as they come together, be the thing that pops out. Like I think this pattern could be very many different looking things, depending on how it was put together. So, and I think, let's see, we've got some book reviews. I don't think there was anything there that was like super interesting. But check this out, you guys. Do you know who this is? Does anybody have a guess who that woman is right there? Her name is on the page, so it might be a little bit of a giveaway. That, my friends, is a baby Barbara Brackman. And in 1975, I think her last name was Barbara Brand. Yep. So I'm guessing Brackman is her married name. I don't think I realized that. But at this point, I'm assuming Brand is her maiden name. But she's Lawrence, Kansas. She's always lived in Lawrence, Kansas. And it says Barbara is interested here. Let me put her quilts up. So Barbara is interested in traditional designs for quilts and likes to make even her new quilts look old. To give her quilts a mellow look, she uses old fabrics, which she finds in antique and thrift shops. She has been collecting old patterns for about 5 years and now has over 1,500 of them. This is when the woman just got started. So, I know Barbara personally, and she's joked with me many times about when are you coming and taking all my crap to the IQM. We joked about me and a couple of other people loading up a U-Haul and just going to her house. So I don't know if that will ever come to fruition, but one day me and my cohorts may get to see some of Barbara's collection. I think she's probably already sent a number of things to the archives at either the University of Nebraska or elsewhere. But I can only imagine Barbara, as well as some of the other women, her kind of in her brackets, her age bracket, or her that time frame. Mary Kay Waldvogel being one. There's a number of women that have been either quilting or collecting and researching since the 70s, or early 80s, and I can only imagine how much they have accumulated in their files. Just a few years in, and Barbara had already made um, so many quilts, or she'd made 14 quilts, and she had over 1,500 patterns. Wild. I mean, that's dedication. And that kind of dedication and collecting is what leads to writing an entire encyclopedia of, patterns, and, the dozens of books that she's written. And, I would say if you don't have any of her books, check them out. I mean, they're great. Some of them are very, very easy to find. Okay, so let me finish reading it. So she's collected over 1,500 patterns. She says, I've made around 14 quilts and quilted several old tops made by others. I've been making quilts for 10 years. In the photo of myself, I'm working on a bicentennial quilt. Let's see. I'm working on a bicentennial quilt, which I hope to have ready by January. I bought the flag blocks in an antique store and have made an appliqued eagle for the center. Now I'm working on some borders to make it full size. One of her current projects, which she is enjoying very much, involves working with the Carrie Hall quilt block collection at Kansas University. Her guild there in Lawrence, Kansas was very involved with the Carrie Hall patterns. And I believe it was the guild president that had wanted to do some stuff with Carrie Hall's, her intellectual property. Barbara is helping catalog the collection. 3 of her quilts are shown here. Tree of Life, an Airplane, which is an old Nancy Page pattern, and Devil's Claws. So this one I think is Devil's Claws right here. And then the Tree of Life is this one. And then these are the airplanes. That airplane one was really popular, I think, like right at the beginning of World War II. That's where I've seen that pattern most often. It's, made up in red, white, and blue as like a, I guess people that had, sons and husbands, etc., who were in the Air Force, and would make that quilt. So this was a surprise, as I'm flipping through, I'm like, wait a minute, I recognize that face. That's Barbara Brackman. And so from here on out, I do think she begins writing for Quilter's Newsletter magazine. I know by the end of the 70s, she had articles here in the magazine. So, all right. I said I might go short today, but I don't think I will. So Hannah's quilt, we're going to skip this one. I will read this another time. But here's another pattern. And I think this is what in the double knit quilts article, I think this is what the woman was referencing. This, yeah. So in issue 61, we introduced a new series. So this is like a quilt of the month or a lock of the month thing. And if I remember correctly, I've seen the other issues. I think the basket stays the same, and it's the flowers themselves that change in the blocks. And I think the basket is such that, like, you could literally make all the baskets the same, or you could change the colors in the basket to match the flowers, or whatever. You could make it all scrappy, whatever. So this is a fun one because it's applique and piecing. All right, armchair shopping. You guys, I mentioned this is one of the big changes. So if you remember, over the past couple weeks, we've looked at several, at least 2 of, well, I know we looked at all the ones in December, right? In the early 70s. And they'd all have that back page, like on the back of the magazine, that had all of these types of, things you could send off for. And some of them were recipes, and some of them were other stuff, flowers and things like that. Now we have 2 complete pages and a portion here, a quarter of a page, of all quilt related stuff. So, and so I'm not really gonna like get into the details here, but you've got bicentennial patterns, you've got quilt scraps, Hawaiian fabric and quilting information, quilt kits, um, quilt stencils, somebody who wants to buy old quilts, um, templates, a photographer specializing in quilts, um, and just making clothing from old quilts. Not a new thing. Quilt Country has the cutter quilts, $5 or $60, $5 to $60. Yeah, so this is interesting. There's no recipes, no Hawaiian ham salad. It's all armchair shopping is all quilt related. So you see, like I think you could kind of plot like the popularity where the Lehmans were accepting, these ads for other stuff, just because that was what was available to them. But now you've got this huge industry, and all of these people wanting to advertise. So I think that is very interesting. I love this. And this is taken from Dover. You guys are probably familiar with Dover, but if not, they're basically books of copyright-free illustrations that were published, dozens and dozens of different types. I have a number of the books. Used them a lot when I was a kid. You check them out of the library and trace stuff out of them. They also did like history and costuming and all kinds of stuff, but I thought this was cool. This is something that it says, could be adapted to applique or to be used as a quilting pattern. And that was one of the things I think a lot of quilt teachers at this time would recommend people either for applique or quilting patterns go to like things like this, like Dover stuff, or children's coloring books, children's picture books. So that's why you sometimes see animals, and things like that on kids' quilts that look vaguely familiar. You're kind of like, why does that? I know that animal. It's because it probably came from like a children's book or a coloring book, and they just used the outline. So I know that was something that was really popular at this time. So this is just information about this particular quilt. It's Jonathan Holstein, and that's interesting. This says made from pattern on next page, except the next page is an ad, so I don't know what that's referencing. I wonder if something was missing. But yes, we're in the home stretch of the magazine here. This baby, the State of 76 Bicentennial Quilt Kit. I have it. And I have done some research on it, and I know the woman who designed it, she got like a special dispensation from the Bicentennial Committee to utilize this bicentennial star. This was like a trademark of the U.S. Bicentennial. This quilt was an absolute nightmare to put together, from what I understand. I think it's the Henry Ford Museum has in their collection pieces of this because the person who donated their stuff never finished it because it was a nightmare. And basically it is applique, but what you were expected to do is cut out these odd shaped pieces and then needle turn them and applique them down. And it was very fiddly. And you think about the fact that there were a lot of people that were getting into quilting in the 70s around, the back to the land movements of the late 60s got people kind of looking at heirloom type things. And then the early 70s, with the bicentennial in mind, there's this colonial revival, there's all this stuff, magazine or antiques and, magazines. And so people are getting excited like, oh, I want to try quilting. That's the thing I want to do. This is challenging for an experienced quilt maker. So you can only imagine somebody who's like, I want to make my first quilt and I want to make it the bicentennial quilt, either would make this thing would be like hideous because it's very difficult, or like the pieces that are in the Henry Ford Museum, they would never finish it. So I have not seen a whole lot of these quilts out there. Now, to buy the kit, pretty easy to find it. But the actual finished pattern, and I think I've read somewhere, it's just like they're very few and far between because this is just a terrible. um I'll have to do a bicentennial roundup soon. And I will pull this out and we can look at the pieces because it's just it's ridiculous. um but this is from B&B Needle Crafts, but the kit itself I think was made, at least the one I have, I think was packaged by Paragon. And there's a couple of those companies, they package this stuff up and it was, they brand it for like a department store or something, so you never quite knew, who it actually was manufactured by, unless were kind of in the know. The interesting thing is, so it's Ely Walker fabric, and $40 per kit and $2 for postage. If you were in Tennessee, 5% sales tax. So yeah, so interesting. Officially recognized commemorative of the American Revolution Bicentennial Administration. So yeah. Okay. So this is the last page, except for the back of the magazine. And this is interesting because to me, at first glance of looking at this strikes me as sort of Amish-like. But I don't think it is. I think it's just, a medallion type of block. Let's see, it says color drawing below serves a double purpose. It shows the whole quilt. Okay, so this is actually a one block quilt. Okay. It shows the whole quilt for a king size bed, 105-inch square. Also, it is the actual pattern full size for a small 7.5-inch square block. You'll need 54 of these small blocks to be set together with 2-inch by 7.5-inch strips and 2-inch squares to make a quilt 85 by 113 inches. This measurement includes a 13-inch border. So to make the large central medallion quilt, refer to figure 1, which is this up here. Fancy quilting, such as the triple tulip pattern, which we looked at earlier, would add to the beauty of this quilt. So, and that is the end. Now, I did say they're peddling all of the quilt stuff now, except for this. You could buy miniature roses. And I thought this was really cute. I was looking at these. I mean, lavender roses. I love that. Green ice, like the names that they came up with for Judy Fisher. I have Judy Fisher roses. The Mary Marshall rose. I guess these are the women that created them, like bred them. I don't know. Anyway, I just thought this was cute. And apparently these are small little dwarf roses that you could have inside or outside. And that, you guys, is the magazine. So I did actually take longer than I expected, but so on Monday we will get to we'll start one of the books. Like I said, I think it's probably going to be American Quilts by Elizabeth Robertson, unless, oh yeah, Jared, we can read. You got to remind me of the their Twitch name. I can't remember. But I gotta run, so you'll have to you'll have to manage the raid as soon as I put it in. So anyway, we'll start the book on Monday. Unless a whole bunch of people want Avril Colby, we're probably gonna do the American Quilts. So yeah, and on Tuesday, of course, Jill and I will be back for the next bit of the Mauve book. Which, for those of you who were there on Tuesday, my apologies. That stream devolved. It devolved. That's all I can say. Go back and watch it if you want, but yeah, it devolved. So yeah, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. If we've got 2 days till the snowmageddon maybe comes. So yes, please be safe. Take care. Don't be out there shoveling ice if you're not if you're not in good shape. I'm like, yeah, I'll just be putting out some snow melt because my back is saying, no, no, you will not be shoveling snow. So yeah, so be safe, stay warm. If you got snow, curl up and quilt. It's the only way to do it, right? All right, you guys, I will see you soon. Take care and mwah, big hugs. Bye.